And welcome back everyone to the recap of round number 7 of the Sligo Chess Festival. Today I played against Emil Risteski, international master from Macedonia. And it was two very important games now back to back. Yesterday I had the nice win and important win against Alexander Krastev, who is the number 2 seed in the tournament, and Risteski is the number 3 seed in the tournament, being a strong international master. Actually, when I was preparing against him, I was quite surprised that his rating is so low, because all of the games I've seen, he's drawing against 2,600 players and not really often losing any games, at least not with black as I've seen. Maybe his statistics with white are worse, but it was definitely not an easy encounter, which I was sure before the game. So let's see what happened. It was an important game also for the tournament standings, because we were both co-leading the event before this game. So I played knight f3 once again, and have been having pretty good results with that. And I think also in this game the opening stage worked out pretty well for me. He's a King's Indian player, and I went for this setup with c4, knight c3, bishop g7, and now g3. Obviously the main line being e4, short castle d4, d6, bishop e2, where black has a couple of options here. In my King's Indian course I recommend the line with knight a6, but also here there are many different lines, and I was not really in the mood to get into a lot of theory here in the King's Indian against him. So I went for g3, short castle, bishop g2, now d6. As a King's Indian player, this is the way to go, basically. Black can also go for some c5 or d5, but this is mostly what Grunfeld players go for, and here white also has some interesting options. h4, for example, is a possibility. So yeah, I did not really expect him to go there. He went for d6, short castle, e5, and now I could go to the King's Indian, to the Fianchetto King's Indian with d4, but instead I quickly prepared this line with d3, which I've played in the past already, but I don't think even in a classical game, maybe in some Title Tuesday. And in general, I think this is quite a good weapon against King's Indian players, because here black does not get his typical King's Indian structure, and it's actually a closed Sicilian with reversed colors. So this is what I'm talking about, just to put it on the board. For example, knight c3, knight c6, g3. This is what people often played back in the day. I think Boris Spassky had many games here with f4, but in general the positions are then quite similar. White usually doesn't go knight f3, but some f4, for example, followed by knight f3. But you get the picture that this is quite similar, just that here, obviously, with me having the white pieces, I'm a tempo up. And also black has committed the knight to f6 already, so he doesn't have f5 in one move, which is another positive aspect, I would say. Went for a5, which is one of the moves. I mostly looked at knight c6 before the game, which is the most common move in the position. And after a5, I actually sort of forgot what I was intending already. I also didn't check now what was my idea. Maybe rook b1 was actually the move which I wanted, but I did have some other ideas as well. Like, for example, there is also h3, which I had as an idea against some of other black's moves. I'm not sure if it was after a5. In the game I played rook b1, which is a decent move. The idea of h3 is going to become clear in a second in the game. So after rook b1 he played rook e8, and generally white's idea in the structure is to play for some b4. That's also why he played a5. If black plays in the typical King's Indian way with knight d7, white wants to go rook b1, then b4, b5, and just continue gaining space on the queen side. It's not so easy for black to actually start doing something in the center, and also not on the king side. Some players do play for some ideas with knight h5, f5, f4, which is probably the most interesting way of handling the position, but objectively speaking, black should not get too many attacking chances on the king side, but it's an interesting way of playing as well. So he played rook e8 now, and now I went for e4, which might look a little bit strange now, but I think this whole concept does make some sense, and I prepared something similar to this, because now with rook e8, black does sometimes have ideas with e4. And if I go e4 myself, I'm of course restricting my bishop on g2. But on the other hand, now the rook is quite misplaced on e8, and I am building a huge center here. Obviously, the d4 square is weak, but on the other hand, yeah, I have a huge center. I have even sometimes ideas to play d4 later on, or I can gain space on the queen side with a3 and b4. Of course, also sometimes the idea exists to move the knight and then to push f4. And this is what I meant earlier, like if I start with h3, now black probably should not go rook e8, because now I get probably a better version, because black does not have the idea of bishop g4, which my opponent played in the game. But yeah, still, black does not have to go for rook e8 now. Maybe some other ideas like knight c6 now could be possible, and yeah. So this is what we had, e4. Now he played bishop g4, which I think is a good move. And we got this position. I think I did prepare something similar like this, and I did recall that the computer generally does prefer white here a little bit, just because of the bishop pair and because of the slight space advantage. But black is also very solid, because black does have the control over the d4 square. He went knight c6, now bishop e3. I played this section of the game rather quickly because I thought it was natural. After the game we discussed that I could also start with queen d1 with the idea that now if he goes for this regrouping, then I'm in time for a3 and b4 immediately. Because in the game I actually was not in time for that. Now knight d7, queen d1, now knight c5, and originally I thought that I could play a3 here, but then when I started thinking about it, I actually didn't like a4 here. And bishop takes c5, d takes c5, white is winning a pawn here, but I think we both thought that black has fantastic compensation here, because the d4 square is very weak. I don't have the d5 square, because black can always play c6, and the d3 pawn is always very weak. So in a practical game, this did seem more pleasant for black already, even though the positions should still be around equal, objectively speaking. So that's why I went for b3 here, to prepare a3 followed by b4, which looks a bit slow, and the computer says that I can immediately go for h4, which I did one move later. But yeah, it did seem like a natural enough move. Knight b4 does not work here. d3 is hanging, but I can just go a3, and black cannot take because of b4. And then he's going to lose the piece on d3. If rook a3 counterattack, I calculated knight b5. Maybe I have other wins as well, but this just ends the game on the spot. So he went knight d4, and here I played h4, which after the game he told me he did not expect at all. But I thought it was a natural idea. First of all, I have ideas with h5, but most importantly, I sometimes want to activate the bishop on h3, and then sometimes I can exchange on e6. Generally, the bishop is probably going to be more active on this diagonal. Maybe I could have also played a3 here, but I just wanted to keep my options open, and I did play a3 on the move after that. He played knight c6, and here is where things probably started to go a bit wrong for me, which I didn't really realize in the game, only afterwards when we discussed it. I played the move h5, which looks fairly logical, but I underestimated his play as it followed with f5. I quickly checked already. I could play b4 here, quite simply, but I did not like it just yet because black immediately gets the a file. Maybe you can play something like rook a3, but yeah, I guess I do have some ways to parry that. Maybe knight e2 now could be possible. I have to watch out for this tactic, of course, which would not be good for white, losing the queen. But this knight e2 idea would have been smart in general. Also here, just trying to get rid of this strong knight on d4, and here probably white is better. For some reason I didn't really consider that in the game, only afterwards I played knight e2. But now I might even have ideas to take twice on d4. Not so clear what black even does here. And in a position like this, like if knight d4, I could even think about taking now and going for some position like this, which seems quite nice for white, some h5 ideas as well. Or I don't have to take, I could maybe also move the queen and then play for some f4 possibly. Before that, f4 might have also seemed logical, like even a bit earlier than that, but in general I did not like it because black can take. And now f5 would be interesting, which we discussed after the game, but even something like knight d4, and then maybe f5 next, and it seems like f4 has only been weakening for white because this bishop on g7 is opening up. So yeah, let's get back to the game. Actually, in the game, I did not expect him to allow me to go in h5 myself, so I expected him to go h5 now. And then I considered something like bishop h3 or a3 and some slow play like this at some point, b4 probably. And once knight e6 comes, I can at least think about taking on e6 because after that, after the straight on e6, I do have the better bishop because the bishop on g7 is not so great. Yeah, in the game I played h5 again. This was not a great decision. Now he played f5, which was a good move. I took on g6. I took on f5. Still, it's probably around equal here. But it started to shift in the wrong direction. Take on f5. And now I played knight e2. At first, my idea was actually queen h5, but then I didn't really see how to continue after queen f6. It's also not clear what black does now next, but he does have some ideas with f4. And I really don't have any moves now. It looks attractive with the queen on h5, but I don't get my rook to h1, and I didn't see a way to continue now. Computer wants to play b4 here, I'm seeing, or even to take on d4, but again, I did not like the a file opening up here. Maybe black can play rook a3, and even though now computer says knight e2 and white is better. But I played knight e2, just wanted to get rid of this annoying knight on d4. He took. And now he went f4, which is a good move. Also, after the game, he told me that there is knight f4, which might be possible. And we thought that here it's probably just completely okay for black, because I might have to go for some opposite color bishop position like this. But now I just turned on the engine, and actually queen f3 is working, which we did not see. I think we both missed that the pawn on f5 is hanging here. We were only talking about ideas like queen d2 or something, but those positions seemed pretty good for black. Yeah, so knight f4 actually not great because of queen f3. And if this, then I'm probably in time for everything. Rook h1, queen h5, and so on. But he played f4, which is actually a good move. Now bishop d2 back. And queen g5, and I really completely did not understand the position because black is actually better here. But I thought that I have enough play in the light squares because I do have a light squared bishop and he doesn't. But it's hard for me to activate the bishop. I played bishop h3. Now I played queen g6. Better was queen h6, which I'm not sure I even considered in the game. But it's quite natural. He's just attacking the bishop on h3, and what am I even doing here? If bishop takes e6, just rook takes e6. Maybe I was thinking about queen g4, but then maybe knight g5, bishop g2, and now something. Yeah, computer says rook e6, which is maybe not so easy to see because what happens if I take here? Maybe just rook g6 in the end. Could be dangerous for white. Yeah, it's actually already pretty bad. Yeah, but this was all not so easy to understand, even though queen h6 obviously can be found. But he went queen g6. And now I played queen e4. And here is where the game started to shift towards my favor again, because he played the move queen h5. If he takes on e4, then I have this intermediate move. And I thought in this endgame I could have some chances because he has the backward pawn on d6. a5 can be a bit weak, and the bishop on g7 is not great. So I thought that this would be at least playable. Computer says it's completely equal, but I thought I could play that. Computer says 0.00, of course. Yeah, I don't want to take here because then the knight could jump to d4 or to g5 or to c5. So yeah. Instead, he went queen h5. Actually, we were discussing also queen h6, and this was the move I was mostly worried about. I was probably about to go bishop f5 here, and we were discussing this a little bit. Sometimes I have ideas with queen h1 even. Endgames are usually something I'm looking forward to because then I can try to hope for the bishop pair. But if black is precise, then I'll probably not even get to the endgame. Like if knight g5, this queen h1 we were looking at, and I'm probably sort of okay here. And bishop g4 and everything is sort of covered. But instead, okay, rook e7 is insane. This is the top computer move. I don't even understand the idea. I guess rook f8 he wants on the next move. That's pretty difficult, in my opinion. Knight d4 seems quite natural. Then I wanted, I think, to go back to g4, and now just the position is good for black. Queen g5 or rook f8, and I'm not in time to get this king g2, rook h1, because after king g2 there's always f3, which is going to win the bishop on d2. So I was quite lucky at this stage of the game. This could have definitely gone wrong. By the way, my opponent even offered a draw to me after taking on e2, and completely justifiably so, because objectively he's already a bit better here. But I declined, and in the end, in fact, I was rewarded for that. Just like yesterday, I didn't even mention that in yesterday's video. Also, Krastev did offer me a draw early in the opening stage. Yeah, let's get back to the game. So he went queen g6, queen e4, and now queen h5. And now I have this tactic. I can take on e6 and then take on f4 and win a pawn. And objectively speaking, the position is, now I'm seeing, not even bad for black. Black does have some compensation, but he missed that after bishop h6 that I have bishop e3. And here he started to lose control because he was quite annoyed, understandably so, because before he had quite a strong initiative, and now he's more on the defensive side because I'm a pawn up, and for the time being, my king is covered. Still, black's king is actually safer, even though he doesn't have any pawns in front of him. He does have more pieces, which can also shield the king and also attack my king. Bishop h6, I also felt like I should not be in many problems here. Computer even says I can go for this, queen h2 and king f3. Here I did not like the fact that it's a bit awkward here. You can go rook f6, I thought maybe could be one idea. But generally I felt like I should not be worse here anymore. Even if I play something passive like queen g2, black definitely has enough compensation, but I should not be worse either, I thought. But I went bishop e3, which has the idea that if he takes on e3, I can take back with the pawn, which opens up the f-file and also the second rank, which is quite beneficial now because I have rook b2, which was a very important move for me. And after this, it's probably already dangerous for black. He went king h8, which is very natural. Computer wants to play rook f8 here and says that everything is still okay. I did not consider that move at all. Take, rook f2 check. Well, everything is not okay. He has to defend this endgame, and computer says it's actually quite alright for black, but in practice, this is definitely not an easy draw for black. He went king h8, trying to prepare rook g8. Queen f3 now. Is this a good move? Yeah, queen f3 is fine. I was also considering queen h4 in the game, but it just felt ridiculous to go into this endgame. Generally, I felt like I do have some possible chances here with rook f6, but it just felt wrong to go to that, so queen f3 was very principled. He went queen h3. Engine still doesn't really understand that. It's always jumping from +1 to 0.3. I went g4 now. Rook g8. That was more or less forced. I, of course, do want to exchange queens in good circumstances for me without dropping any pawns. So rook g8, rook g2, and now e4 was the mistake, actually. I think we were both already at this point quite sure that white should be at least considerably better. Computer says queen h4. I intended to go g5 now, and I thought I should be winning. But there's rook hg6, which is the only move. I thought I'm winning here with rook h2. Wow, that's actually insane. Rook g5, king h1, and now I saw that if he takes, then h5 is covered. And I thought I'm just winning. But amazingly, black has rook 8 to g7 here. And I cannot stop rook f7 from coming. And if queen f8 check, just king h7, and that's amazing. And rook h5 is there. Yeah, that's insane. Very, very difficult to, if not impossible, to find in the game, in my opinion. Even here, black has to suffer probably, because I can go to an endgame like this. Rook f6, for example. Take, and black probably needs to defend some endgame with the pawn down. Like in a practical game, this could also be quite dangerous if I'm looking at it now. It's a very nice exercise. If you have some students who are insanely good at calculating, they might be able to find the best defense here, starting from this position. But yeah, my opponent went for e4. Now I have to watch out. I cannot take with the queen, because then he has check and rook f8 and wins the game. But I can take with the pawn, and now of course my pawn structure is broken, but I'm also up 2 pawns for the time being. again, if queen h4 now, again g5, and now all of this should not be working like it was before. Like if rook g6 now, there might be even some other ideas than rook h2, like queen f4, for example. Now should be winning because I can take with the pawn. Yeah, so he took on f3 and went for this rook endgame. I'm 2 pawns up. Actually, I didn't even choose the most precise way now. I went rook h2 check. Better was rook f5, which I also considered. The idea being that if he takes here, then I have check and another check, and I'm winning the rook on g8. Not even sure what I didn't like here. a4, b4 also seems like a good version for me. I just rook h2 also seemed fine, and now rook h5, attacking the pawn on a5, and at the same time threatening rook g5 check in some cases. Like he cannot take again because I'm again winning the rook or checkmating. Yeah, he went a4. Now this was the final mistake. Computer says rook a8 is the only way to keep the game going, and actually not even such a huge advantage. I thought I'm just winning here, but he says that this is still actually very good drawing chances because he can take on e4, and then also this pawn is weak. Yeah, rook a8 would have been another chance, but okay, I have something like this, for example, and it's all quite a close call for black to defend this. He went a4, and now that was important to go into this rook endgame immediately, not to allow him to keep the rooks on the board, because then it could again be not as simple. But with one pair of rooks exchanged, now b4, and everything is consolidated, I'm just ready to get my king. And yeah, he tried some forcing idea with d5. If he just doesn't do anything, I can just briefly show you. Just gonna bring the king to f3, then rook f5. I even can pick up another pawn on a4 next, or push e5, d takes e5, king e4. Should just be an easy technical win. So he played d5, and now I do have to be a bit precise. I think this was the best way, because now he took back with the pawn, and now I have king f2, which he missed, and after that he resigned because I'm just gonna be 2 pawns up. But instead, if I'm not as careful, and if I take back here, we both thought that black has very good drawing chances. It might still be winning. Probably it is, but it's all of a sudden it's not easy whatsoever. Like, the thing is, if I go rook d4 now, he is in time to bring back the king. And he's going to pick up a3, and that should be a draw. Because I'm not in time to push the pawn, I think he should be in time to bring back the rook somehow. And the a-pawn will also be sufficient for counterplay. And if d6, then rook d3. This is an important point. I think the computer wants something like this, and still says that white has good winning chances, or it should be winning, but it would not be so much fun to then convert this if there is something easier. Yeah, the main difference in the game is if it takes on e3 now, then I have d6, and with those 2 pawns still being on the board, rook takes a3 doesn't work immediately because of rook d4, and I'm promoting. And if rook d3, then I have c5. And now the pawn is covered. If king g5, I can just go to the back rank, and he can never move the rook from the d file anymore, because then I have d7, and then I'm just promoting on the next move. And if he takes this pawn, I'm just going to bring the king, and at some point I can start collecting the pawns on the queen side, and I'm easily winning. So this is how the game concluded, and after king f2, he resigned. Obviously, a huge win for the tournament standings, which puts me at 6 out of 7 points, which to me is a very respectable result. Obviously, there were some chances, especially in the second game, which I left, but apart from that, I really cannot complain. Today, the game could have definitely gone differently. Also, yesterday, it was a huge fight against Krastev, and very happy with how the tournament is going so far. I'm leading the tournament by half a point, and most likely tomorrow I'm going to play against the person who is trailing behind me, who is one of the Irish talents. This is most likely who's going to be my next opponent. Next round starts tomorrow at 4 p.m. Once again, same time. For the final time commentary, again with Jose Barria. Today there was There was Kosti again. Let me know if you guys enjoyed the commentary overall. Last round will not be covered, but tomorrow there's going to be commentary once again. So that was it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see more from me, you can find my socials in the video description down below. Also check out my courses there in case you want to support the channel. And that was it for today. And I'm gonna see you guys tomorrow.